So welcome to this, the first Poetry for Social Justice event organised by the Reading Amnesty International Group as part of the wider Festival for Social Justice, where 40 local Amnesty International groups across central England came together for a festival event that ends at the end of May. Tonight's event is the end of a long journey. A poetry competition and event had been on the minds of the Reading Amnesty International Group for some time. Ahmed Mansour, an engineer, poet and father of four, and one of our prisoners of conscience because of a prisoner of conscience is anyone who is imprisoned because of their race, sexual orientation, religion or political views, who have been imprisoned or persecuted for non-violent expression of their conscientiously held beliefs. He has been imprisoned in inhumane conditions in 2018 and has been sentenced to 10 years. What makes poetry powerful, we might ask? Poets who write about human rights can generate empathy by connecting readers and listeners to experience of rights being enjoyed, denied or defended. The arts create an environment of expression and empathy that other forms of communication may not. Before we celebrate the poets and poems tonight, I have to say a number of thank yous. To you, the audience, for turning up, for being here, to the entrants who wrote the poems. The standard of the poems has been extremely high, and we were very surprised as this was the first year that we've ran the competition. I also like to say thank you to the other people that helped me organise the competition and this event. So that's Amanda, Vin and Hilary. We've all become quite good friends. To the judges, all 5 of them who have given their time with huge generosity and have provided significant feedback. Each one of them will be talking tonight. And then finally, I have to say thank you to those people who donated prizes for our winners. So we have a limited edition print by renowned artist Rob Ryan, which said, if you believe in freedom, then you must want freedom for everyone. And if you believe in equality, then you must want everyone to be equal. We also have 2 courses for our winners, one from the Oxford School of Poetry and one from the Poetry School. So our ambition with the competition and this event and the festival was to raise awareness of Amnesty International, the work of the local groups, and to keep human rights high, if not top, of everyone's agenda. And it is a call to action to raise awareness with poems that move, that give hope, that highlight issues. So as this next poem tells us that I'm about to play, do not be quiet, but say something.
Say something. Say something about us, about scarcity, squalor, disease, about avarice, lust and massacre, about bloodshed, torture, crime, about celebrity, ignorance and bling, about politics. Say something about Syria, Libya, Afghanistan. Say something about Nairobi and 1,000 other wretched places. Say something about war. Say something about sweatshops, jobs and slavery. About poisoning, pollution and pimps, about fracking the Karoo, the obscene nonsense of sustainable growth, about things that waste and die, that we're killing along with ourselves, about China. Say something about elephant, rhino and lion, about tiger, orangutan, pangolin, condor, dolphin and whale. Say something about the planet, our lovely threatened globe, about me, about ours, about us. Say something about sickness of the body, of the TV mind, of the right to speak out, of the heart, of the soul, about death, about death, about death. Say something about husbands, wives and daughters, about sisters, brothers, sons. Say something about corruption, about murder and rape, about loneliness, sorrow, wickedness, despair. Say something about gods and gullibility, about faith, about bigotry and sin, about daydreams and night terrors, the childish compulsion to believe. Then pause and say something, if you can, whisper it, about peace, about hope, about life. Say something about them, about us, the same, we're the same. Some honor, some decency, some light, some love. Not gods, not spirits, not heavens, not hells, but us alone. Something that we are. Speak it, and speak it, and speak it. Speak us.
Thank you very much for that. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Yasmin Sharma, who is a lecturer in modern and contemporary literature at the University of Reading. She also teaches poetry writing to refugees through her local workshops at the Reading Refugee Support Group. Over to you, Yasmin.
Thank you. It's been such a privilege to serve as a judge for this competition, not only because poetry and social justice are two pursuits dear to my professional and personal heart, but also because I've been wondering more often lately how they marry. That is, I've been wondering what the point of getting poetry right is in this world full of so many wrongs, so many obvious wrongs. Yesterday was the anniversary of George Floyd's death by police officer. He died, as we all know, crying for his mother, while a police officer knelt on his neck. His last words were, "I can't breathe." It's been a year of feeling like we can't breathe, not just for those reasons, but for others. And what is perhaps more horrifying is that nothing has exactly changed. So what to do? Well, poetry gives us some advice. Alice Oestreicher writes in a poem ostensibly about painters that Matisse too, when the finger ceased to work, worked larger and bolder, his primary colors celebrating the weddings of innocence and glory, innocence and glory. Monet, when the cataracts blanketed his eyes, painted swirls of rage, and when his sight recovered, painted water lilies. Picasso claimed, "I do not seek, I find," and stuck to that story about himself and made that story stick. Damn the fathers, we are talking about defiance. I love that poem's defiance and the way it sneaks up on you. I love all poetry's defiance and the way it is written in spite of the cataracts blanketing our eyes, the way it gets both large and innocent, the way its glories wade out of swirls of rage to sneak up, damn it, and surprise us. For another example of the power in the quiet yet booming surprises possible in poetry of social justice, take Ross Gay's poem, which portends to tell us about a fact that is small while making the need to understand it quite big. It's called A Small Needful Fact. It's short, I promise. A small needful fact is that Eric Garner worked for some time for the Parks and Rec Horticulture Department, which means, perhaps, that with his very large hands, perhaps, in all likelihood, he put gently into the earth some plants, which, most likely, some of them, in all likelihood, continue to grow, continue to do what plants do, like house and feed small and necessary creatures, like being pleasant to touch and smell, like converting sunlight into food, like making it easier for us to breathe. I think this poem is an excellent example of the sort of thing Seamus Heaney advocates. And I was pleased to see that one of my own favorite poems about social justice, which is too long to share, is Seamus Heaney's The Republic of the Conscience, which was actually written after the invitation from Amnesty International in 1985 to write a poem. So it coalesces here. Heaney tells us, what necessary poetry always does is to touch the base of our sympathetic nature while taking in at the same time the unsympathetic nature of the world to which that nature is constantly exposed. The form of the poem, in other words, is crucial to poetry's power to do the thing which always is and always will be to poetry's credit. The power to persuade that vulnerable part of our consciousness of its rightness in spite of the evidence of wrongness all around it. The power to remind us that we are hunters and gatherers of values, that our very solitudes and distresses are creditable, insofar as they too are an earnest of our veritable human being. Perhaps this is specifically the job of the poetry of social justice, to persuade us of rightness in spite of wrongness. The poem holds a small but needful place on the shelf of activism and, perhaps we don't call it this, but care for the world. It's been an honor to read so many poems striving to be on that shelf, and it's an honor to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Yasmin, that was very insightful, and you covered a lot of ground in a short space of time. So thank you very much for that. We would now be handing over to Claire Dyer, although sadly she can't actually be with us in person tonight.
Hello, and I'm so sorry I can't be with you this evening, but I would just like to say a huge thank you to Amnesty International for asking me to help judge the Poetry for Social Justice poetry competition. I adored every minute of it. It was humbling and awe-inspiring and wonderfully collegiate experience with my fellow judges. And I'd just like to say congratulations to all those who've been placed or had highly commended prizes awarded. I would like to read 3 poems for you this evening from my latest Two Rivers Press collection. It's called Yield, and the book charts my journey as a mother as my son transitions to being my daughter. I would say I have my daughter's permission to refer to her by her old name, status, gender and pronoun. And the book is organised around 3 definitions of the verb to yield. So there is to bring forth, to give in, and to gain something valuable. And I'd like to read, my first poem is called The Label Maker, and it is to do with how we in society like to label people, and we shouldn't need to have to. The Label Maker. The label maker has small hands, can stitch hummingbird quick, favours wearing bright colours, lime, cerise, aquamarine. He carries a pop-up house in a velveteen bag, is bald, shameless, has obsidian eyes. See him wait outside M&S for the man to sit, bend his head. See the coins, the wire-haired dog. See the label maker's cotton of heron wing grey. His label says, homeless. See him follow a woman to a hotel door. Watch as she checks in. He leans against a wall, stitches her faithless in silver thread. See him at the chemist's with fabric on his lap, as the boy who once was loved swallows methadone, hands back the plastic cup. The world now is hopeless. See him later in your kitchen. See your child. On the table is a form for something ordinary. See him make ready when they falter at the gender box. See the sun glint on his needle and his small hands. See your honeycomb heart shatter, fall. And the next poem I'd like to read is an imagining of what it would be like if Martians came to Earth and tried to understand our ideas around gender. It's called Trans. Transport is this, a way of travel or the travel to rapture. Translation is this, our talk so they understand it. The handbook tells us our journey will be fast and long, the stars far flung. We will scatter them as we pass, not stop to hear them scream. On landing we will learn gravity, yearn for home, look for pairings, the rare birds, white, mysterious, majestic, which mate for life. Look for strange, the rare boys and girls who shapeshift and move on. The handbook has no drawings of this. Transition is this, the shapeshift and move on. And there are those they call mother, who sometimes stand triumphant, waving banners from high places, sometimes hide in corners, hearts splintering the carpet. We are told not to worry. We are the lucky ones. Our talk needs no deciphering. We have the gift of knowing without saying, of saying without knowing. We are already both boy and girl, and we are neither. Our love is unconditional. The handbook has many drawings of this. And then finally, I like to read one called Doing Cartwheels at the Ritz, which actually happened. I was at the Ritz and a girl did cartwheels. I'll leave you to imagine for yourself whether the end of the poem actually happens or not. Doing cartwheels at the Ritz. Walk in like you own the place, I said, and leaving the low hum of Piccadilly behind us, we did, and sat in chairs like thrones, ordered wine which came in glasses as wide as our cupped hands. As we drank, we laughed, the carousel of baby grand and waiting staff nodding small and tight to one another as they passed by. In time, two perfect people on the catwalk of the main salon, stylish, moneyed, wearing tiaras of happiness, husband, wife, in front of them a child, a cream-lace dress, doing cartwheels down the centre aisle as though this were a parade and they the spectacle the crowds had been waiting for. We smiled. Our years together, bursting through the mirrored walls in licks of magenta flame, cinematic and extravagant, we saw your birth, first words and steps, the skim of stones on a turquoise sea, your awkward boyhood years. Come, I said, let's do the same. And putting down our drinks, we did. Through the onlookers, through the music, the towers of flowers or the chandelier light of that particular wondrous night, you and I did cartwheels at the Ritz, setting free the inner girl in both of us. Thank you.
I'd like to say a very special thank you to Claire for recording that video for us. We have arrived at the point in the evening where Claire was going to introduce and talk about the winning poets. And I've just seen Stunning Poems, Claire, come through on the chat, and I think that's definitely the case. So at this point, I will be handing over to Hilary, I believe, who's going to take us through some of the feedback from the judges on the young adults poems, and then the winners of the 16 to 17-year-old group will then read their poems for us. Hilary, are you?
I am ready to go.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yes, I have got the delightful task of introducing the winners of the 16 to 17 years youth competition. So I'd like to say thank you to every single one of you who entered. In the words of the judges, we've been humbled by the quality of all your efforts and by the courage of all your voices. As well as our 3 winning poems, the judging panel selected 6 that they felt were outstanding and that they highly commended. The panel wrote, "The poems in the highly commended list tell us that we have to listen to the young. They have very real things to say, and it's their world in the end." They noted the impressive range of topics covered, the laser vision, the language and form being used to maximum effect to reflect anger, injustice and power. All of the highly commended poems were close contenders for the top 3 choices. And these poems were, in alphabetical order, Backwards by Charlie Bowden. Charlie, are you there? Can you give us a wave if you are? Crisis is the key word, and also When Will My Body Be Mine? And these were both by Maddie Dowling. Hello, is Maddie there? Congratulations. And the next one is Runaway Train by Olivia Griffith. Hello, Olivia. And we have These Are the Children by Amelia Petto. I can't see if you're all there, but hello if you are. And I know that the next one is Will They Touch This by Praniti Giuliani, and I'm sure I saw you there, Praniti. So well done, and congratulations to all 6 of you. So coming to our 3 winning entries, our 3 winning poems. I'm starting with 3rd place. In 3rd place is Charis Willis with her poem, It's Not Right. The judges commented that this poem is thematically brave, riveting, daring. It demonstrates the power of the poetic voice with an honesty and youth that dares to take up the space of the poem with authority and strength. Charis told me she likes writing poems, especially to tell of her own and others' experiences. She's a Christian and was thinking about the persecution of Christians when she wrote this. She said, "It is a reminder that those suffering for their faith are not forgotten." And that writing her poem was a little thing I could do to help. Well, Charis, I think it's a big thing, and we'd love to hear you read your poem now.
It's not right. Dark of the night in a quiet home, doors locked, blinds closed, 3 of us huddled, crammed around candles, no brighter than a whisper of light. 3 of us huddled, hurried and hushed, no louder than a whisper of wind. Dark of the night in a child's room, eyes open, mind confused. Whose are those voices talking full of fear, no further than the kitchen door? Whose are those voices speaking of a loving God, no crazier than the man imprisoned? Bright in the day at the local school, answers slip, suspicions rise. I don't understand the questions they ask, no clearer than the ominous fog. I don't understand the teacher's contempt, no colder than a devouring flame. Bright in the day in the town square, soldiers march, people cry. It's not right how they make the children watch, no fairer than the rules that we're made to bow to. It's not right how their bullets pierce us, no sooner than the general's shouting command. It's not right how my last living thought before I reach the steps of death's door is how many more need to die before the world answers our cry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And a big clap to Charis. That was lovely. Well done. So I'm moving on to 2nd place. In 2nd place, second to read her poem is Edie Berkeley with her poem Mankind. And about this, the judges said, this poem manages to combine in its images a variety of significant reverberations and different issues, utilizing repetition as a tool of rearrangement. It manipulates the image of crimson with the acute sensitivity, and in so doing demonstrates a careful poetic craft. Edie likes to write many things, short stories as well as poems. She believes it is everyone's duty to try to get involved in human rights issues. She was inspired to write her poem by recent events like Sarah Everard's murder and by general inequalities that all women face, especially to do with the male gaze. Let's hear Edie read her poem.
Mankind. Saturated grass upon a flowering hill, bright, youthful, innocent, towering high, chillingly still, weeds, fawns, crimson. Basked in the sun, the flowers grew, bright, youthful, innocent, inhibiting winds, out of view, burnt, withered, crimson.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, another clap. another clap for Edie, please. we're virtual cupping. We're doing the reactions, but yeah, well done. Thank you. So now we're moving on to our winning poem, and our winning poem is in the youth 16 to 17 years category. It is a redacted account by Yusara Ziauddin. The judges said, the poem in form and content is on message, using the contemporary technique of deleting lines, but reconfiguring its idea to expunge that which has been redacted. It said it demonstrates a braveness in its going to the heart of the issues of social justice, gendered, religious, and cultural. Yusara enjoys writing poems. She's entered school competitions before, but encouraged by a friend, this is the first time of entering an external competition. So we're very pleased you did. She feels passionate about human rights and was moved to write her poem, Redacted Account, after reading about the injustice of ill treatment suffered by Saudi Arabian activist Raif Badawi on our website. And just for information, Raif Badawi was sentenced in 2012 to 10 years in prison and 1,000 lashes for establishing a website focused on political and social debate. So I give you Yusara Ziauddin to read her poem.
I am marked with the colours of dissent in the pattern of 1,000 lashes, where totalitarian authority clenched its whip and made a stab at exerting the smear of conformity upon my back, while the world watched, silent. The cane thundered upon the papery skin that barely armoured me, hardly a soldier, and the heavens didn't part with uproar. It didn't scream my pain like the poet said it would. Not a single disturbance in the city of Jeddah. The mosque stood silent, tall and pristine, but nature and God speaking were fantasies on worn pages of ancient books. The crowds around me stood silent. The people spoke nothing, and I caved into my own blood, charged with the crime of speaking. We are not the same. You load your Browning high-power semi-automatic pistol with bullets. I load my pen with ink cartridges. You flog people at the words of someone else. I get flogged for saying my words. You may hold the cane, but as far as I'm concerned, this is self-flagellation, an act of worship in the name of freedom.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm sure I can see all the reactions coming in there. Well done. Big clap for everyone. So thank you. I'm going back to Ruth now, I believe.
Yeah, thanks, Hilary. I must admit those poems from the young adults are absolutely incredible. I'm so inspired, and that they came and they spoke and they did this and they crafted those words is pretty amazing in my book. We're now handing over to Desiree, who is an award-winning spoken word artist. I'm very excited about this because I've heard very good things about you, Desiree. Writer and facilitator based in London and Slough. So please feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead. Excellent.
Hiya, I'm actually in Slough at the moment. I'm volunteering at the vaccination centre, which is why my video is on and off. It was an absolute honour to judge these poems. Thank you so much for entrusting me with them. Reading them all was delightful. As somebody who has a background in both performance and page, it was just so wonderful to hear. Also, it's very wonderful to hear the poems come to life outside of that. So thank you. I'm going to be performing a piece for you two pieces for you today. So usually, sometimes I get a bit nervous. Believe it or not, even though because my chosen career, I get a bit nervous. So I'd like to start with a joke. Obviously, I'm going to do it at home, but I'd like to start with a joke, if that's okay. Yeah, is that right? Perfect. So a girl walks into a bar and says, ouch, because it's a bar. No? Okay. So what about a woman walks into a poetry night and she screams, "See, safe places are only safe when the monsters show their face," and it's funny. How the same men protesting hashtag all men are trash and are pulling their friends out of black bin bags, and it's funny. How sexism can still prevail even where liberals dwell, and it's funny. How often we confuse the word enlightenment with entitlement. How conscience is only ever a result of consequence. How even in these progressive circles, a woman is still just a man's accomplishment. And I am tired. I do not want to hear another "I am sorry, I got caught" apology. If you break something, you cannot fix it with "I'm sorry, so I don't want your apology." I don't want your excuses. I don't want to hear "boys will be boys." I want to be surprised that they do this. These men make our movies. They run our poetry nights. They tell us jokes. They host children's TV. They have the nuclear code, so no. I do not want to hear another person tell me not all men. Because if every woman has at least one Me Too story, yet me outnumber them, that doesn't make sense. So instead of saying not all men, why don't you just try not to be one of them? And don't liken this to a witch hunt, because a witch hunt has no substance. We have receipts, we have tweets, we have confessions on TV. No wonder why not even the arts wanted to hear women speak. They were afraid. Because look at how resilient we are even through all of this pain, and it happens again and again and again. And yes, I am tired. And yeah, I'm talking to all men because we need all men to stand beside us because time's up. Because yes, that has happened to me too. So maybe a woman can just walk into a bar or walk home and get the respect that she ought to. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That one, I suppose what is quite sad about both of the poems that I'm going to be performing today is that they, even irrespective of when they were written, they always still hold so much weight and so much value. And I want there to be a time where I have to stop performing them because that's not an issue anymore. And I hope that day comes soon. On that note, so this next poem that I'm going to perform, this last poem I'm going to perform, is also, I wrote, I think 4 or 5 years ago now. It was just after Philando Castile and Alton Sterling were murdered within a few weeks of each other in America. And I didn't know what to do with all of this pain and all of this sadness. So I do what I usually do, and I wrote something. This is in my new collection, which is, I'll put my website and you can get it off my website. It's called "I Find My Strength in Simple Things." But this poem is called "Affording Justice." I do not want to have to write this poem for you. I do not want to have to watch you bleeding out in the street or in your car. I do not want to see them pin you to the ground. I do not want them to use only the top half of a family photograph so they can make you out to be some sort of demon because it fits in better with their story. I do not want to have to light a fire under this city so everybody knows what it feels like to burn. I do not want to hear "I can't breathe" be your very last words. I do not want them to put a hashtag in front of your name, and I do not want a riot to be your legacy. I do not want us to birth any more parentless children whose skin make them the enemy. I do not want to have the need to justify my existence with a catchy phrase. I do not want to have to explain Black Lives Matter doesn't mean other lives don't again. I do not want to watch another mother cry for their baby on TV. And I do not want to hear another white man tell me how I should feel about my history. They are trying to break us. We can watch our children die on YouTube or more conveniently on our timelines. They recreated our jungles out of concrete, but our deaths aren't worth the airtime. See, some may call it police brutality or systematic racism. I have a hard time calling it anything other than genocide. We were brought here in chains and they're confused because we still wear them. We were whipped and now we buy whips, live in cribs because our growth scares them. But this revolution will be televised and it won't be whitewashed or swept over. You can BET that we will no longer be bought by slave owners. If George Zimmerman could be found not guilty, but sell his gun to the highest bidder, look how far we've come means that they've only stopped publicly calling us. It took Doreen Lawrence 20 years to get justice for her son. And Sarah Reid was found dead in her police cell, but look how far we've come. If Malcolm and Martin were around today, would their words still survive? See, we don't just have trigger fingers, we have Twitter fingers out here penetrating lies, perpetuating lies. We have become assistants in our own demise, and I do not want to have to write this poem again. I do not want us to have to bury any more of our women and men, and I do not want to be seen as a victim. But I refuse to be a victim of this system. You cannot cage a person, degrade them, and then still demand their respect and patience. This movement is a product of frustration and age-old racism. We are not looking for special treatment. We just want to be a part of a system that isn't corrupted. In lands where our ancestors built the wealth, when will we be able to afford justice? Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Somebody's already put my website in the chat, so you can find out what else I'm doing there, and follow me and read my newsletters and stuff. But this has been such an honor. Thank you so much to the Poetry for Justice and Amnesty International in Reading for having me. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Desiree. That was very, at the beginning, I talked about the power of poetry. And I think, you know, I'm feeling a bit emotional by your words. So thank you so much. So yeah, it's been great. And I've put your website there, and feel free to put other stuff in the chat as we go along. It's brilliant. Thank you. I've lost my track now, so we'll just take a moment to digest the words. And at this point, I'm handing over to Anne McFarlane from the Reading Amnesty International Group, who will talk a bit about the Reading Amnesty International Group and the work that we do locally in Reading, and about Amnesty and local groups themselves. Anne, are you?
I am, yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, brilliant. Thank
you. Just like Ruth, I'm feeling a little bit emotional now, and I do feel that putting this in here almost kind of, you know, disrupts the flow somewhat of such marvelous words. And, you know, it's just, I'm not a poet in any way myself, but, you know, I can appreciate the words so much. And as I say, quite emotional. So I'll try not to take up too much time. Ruth mentioned at the beginning, this event has been organised as part of Amnesty UK's Central England Festival of Social Justice. And it's it's one of over 50 events that have taken place over a 6-week period from mid-April to the end of May. The Festival of Social Justice has brought together 40 local amnesty groups in the region, other amnesty networks and channels, and a range of community organisations to spread the word about social justice and human rights, and to engage as big and diverse a group of people as possible in campaigning action now and in the future. And it's amazing to see the diversity of people just on this call and in terms of the poems that have been written. One of the aims of the festival was to provide opportunities for learning, fun, participation and activism. Whoever you are and wherever you are, you can be and you are a human rights defender. The events over the festival have covered topics such as refugees, trade, modern slavery, Palestine and Chile, and just this evening, you know, the topics that we've already covered are equally diverse. The festival has had music, videos, films, photographs, presentations, discussions and poetry. Quite a lot of poetry, actually. This is not the only poetry event, and it just goes to show how important poetry is as part of medium of expression and education for human rights. And only earlier this week I was listening to poetry in terms of supporting and engendering peace, both in war zones and, interestingly, also in schools. So that was quite interesting. So I hope you've all enjoyed being part of this event, continue to enjoy being part of this event. And inevitably, I'd like to take the opportunity to encourage you to continue to be part of the Amnesty movement of human rights defenders. Amnesty is a global organisation of some 10 million ordinary people standing up for humanity and human rights. Amnesty International has a strong reputation for its research and its rigour. This means that the campaigns that we take part in are supported by robust data, and by a confidence that the actions taken are focused to have the most impact. And just as importantly, it won't put individuals at further harm. We know our actions work. The responses of those people and organisations that have seen positive change are a testament to that. But as Desiree said in her poem, the change can be slow, and it only comes through patience, determination, and people power. That's you and that's me. There are many ways that you can get involved. And of course, I'm very keen to encourage you to join the Reading group. But I know that many of you aren't based in Reading. Nonetheless, I'm sure you can find a group near you to join if you just go to the Amnesty webpage and search for local groups. There are over 280 groups across the UK, and that includes school and university groups too. Each group is run by volunteers, and we carry out a range of different activities, from campaigning, lobbying our MPs, organising events and stalls, and raising money. The Reading group is particularly active on human rights in Southeast Asia and in Cuba, as well as the Stop the Death Penalty campaign. And we've heard that we've got a prisoner of conscience in the United Arab Emirates, in fact 2 prisoners of conscience, one of which is a poet. We recently had talks on modern slavery and the United Arab Emirates. And as well as this poetry competition, we have a human rights trail around Reading and Caversham. So if you're in town this weekend, see if you can find at least one of our posters, if not all 12 of them. We're going to have a stall at Reading's Waterfest in a couple of weeks' time. And we've been known, outside of COVID restrictions, to have music events, quizzes, barn dances and sponsored walks. So there's lots of things and lots of different ways that people can get involved. If that all sounds a little bit too heavy for you, too much effort, you can possibly join our mailing list and get a monthly update on campaign actions, or join our Facebook group, or follow us on Twitter. And we'll put some of these things in the chat. We regularly post electronic actions that you can take part in on both Facebook and on Twitter. So finally, I'm going to stop there so that we can get back to the poetry. I just want to say a big, huge, massive thank you to everybody for educating me, allowing me to be part of this, but particularly to the judges, those people who put poems into the competition, and to Ruth, Hilary, Amanda and Vin, who have done an absolutely magnificent job in organising this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. And I would say, I think, as you said, there's plenty of ways for people to become involved in the, in championing in human rights. You don't necessarily have to do all of them, but just do some of them. As we say, doing nothing is probably, in my mind, the worst crime anyone can make. So at this point, we are about to hand over to Kathy Teitler, who was the winner of the Reading Poetry Slam in April. And I will leave Kathy, assuming she's online. There's so many people, I can't necessarily see everyone, but Kathy, if you would like to unmute yourself and talk about your poems, which I believe you're going to, there's 2 of them, and tell us the motivation that led you to write them.
Okay, good evening, everybody. And greetings from Reading Poetry Slam. Yes, we had our slam online in April with the subject of social justice and human rights. And I've got 2 poems on that subject. Just before I do my poems, just a little bit about Reading Poetry Slam, which is based in Reading. And in usual times, we meet on the first Sunday of every month at Global Cafe, London Street, Reading. But for the last over a year, we've been meeting on Zoom. You can see the Dreading Poetry Slam page on Facebook for details, and it's Reading with a D in the front, Dreading. Poetry Slam is a friendly competition of performance poetry featuring many different styles of poetry. We welcome poets, audience, and we pick judges at random from the audience, so you can even come along and be a judge. If you want to take part, the only rules are that the poems must be your own work and less than 3 minutes long. So just write it, join us, step up to the microphone, and off you go. Amnesty International campaigns against the use of the death penalty worldwide, and one of the countries where it is used a lot is in the United States of America. My 2 poems are on this subject and looking at the outcome for 2 individuals in the United States. In September 2011, Troy Davis was executed in Georgia after a long campaign trying to prove his innocence. And this is the poem that I wrote at the time. Old-fashioned justice. Years ago at school, you got the cane. You were there, you looked guilty, so you were to blame. You still don't know what was your crime, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. You knew you were innocent, you tried to protest. 'Twas no good. You still got 6 of the best, but you can laugh about it now. Today in Georgia, they put a man to death. For 20 years with dignity, he did protest. He said he was innocent of the capital crime. He'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. All around the world, millions did shout, "Stop this execution, there is too much doubt." He will never laugh again. State murderers believed they had right on their side, ignored all the protest. They said that he lied. Is this justice in the land of the free? We are all Troy Davis. Any one of us could be damned in the wrong place at the wrong time, convicted and punished for a capital crime, a crime that we know that we did not do, unable to convince that what we say is true. Across the abyss of execution, all words are lost. There is no return, just tears and anger and no resolution, and the slow fuse of injustice continues to burn. Many people remain on death row for decades and they die in custody. Very occasionally, there is a different outcome. On Easter Day in 2015, I was listening to the World Service early in the morning, and it carried the news that Anthony Ray Hinton had been released from jail after 30 years on death row in Alabama. He was innocent. His book, The Sun Does Shine, is well worth reading. And at the end, there are 26 pages of 3 columns of all naming all the prisoners on death row in the USA in 2018. It is estimated that 1 in 10 of these prisoners are innocent. This is my poem for Anthony Ray Hinton. Resurrection, Easter 2015. A heavy door opens and the stone is rolled away. He walks back into life from the cell where he had to stay. When the years turned into decades, from the shadows to the sunlight, from untouched solitary into warm human arms, from death row to freedom. Imprisonment of the innocent in the land of the free. There was no need to prove this black man's guilt in that Alabama penitentiary. He kept his faith. he didn't feel bitter. He doesn't hate. He never let them take away his joy. For Anthony Ray Hinton, once condemned to death, now free. Thank you.
Well, Kathy, again, very moving, but one very sad and moving and one with hope, although obvious serious injustice. I mean, I can't imagine, I really can't imagine how anybody can get through that. But thank you very much for reading your poems and for being so active. At this point, we're going to hand over to Peter Robinson, who is one of our, another one of our judges, our 5 judges, who gave up his time so gratefully to judge the poems. He's a professor at University of Reading. He's poetry editor for Two Rivers Press. He's also been awarded the Cheltenham Prize, the John Florio Prize, and 2 Poetry Book Society recommendations for collections of his poetries and translations. So very esteemed poet. So is Peter ready to unmute his mic and read his poems?
I am, yes, if you'd like to share them with the people here. So the first poem I want to read is from quite a long time ago. It was written, it's dated the 30th of November 2006, when I happened to be in America and visited the Art Institute at Chicago, where again there happens to be an exhibition of Charles Sheeler's paintings. And this poem is a little response to that exhibition and a small accident really that happened while I was wandering around it. It mentions in the course of the poem Mr. President, and obviously I just need to point out that that's not the current president or the previous one or indeed the one before that, but it's George W. Bush. So this is a poem about the war on terror, as it was called, and the way in which obviously it's still with us. So I'll read this one. At the Institute, after Charles Sheeler. He was touching the hard edge where life and art met. I was gazing at precisionist cityscapes and furniture. And just so as I wouldn't forget, there in a stillness like peace and silence secured at some price, Mr. President himself was defending his own legacy, his bloody adventure. He was staying the course. He would get the job done. A refurbishment worker's too loud radio come thoughtlessly from an adjacent room. And just so as I wouldn't forget, there the artist looks at nature, was a painter in his studio, touching the hard edge where life and art met. And the second poem I'd like to read, there's just 4 of them, they're all short like that. It's called Variations on a Theme of Bill Manhire's. And Bill Manhire is a senior New Zealand poet. The theme that these are variations on is actually stated in the last lines of the poem. So you'll get there, as it were. It's got one word in it that perhaps I should explain. The word extracomunitari is an Italian word meaning people who are outside, who are not citizens of the European Union. And it's used rather broadly as a sort of euphemism for immigrants. Here it is, Variations on a Theme of Bill Manhire's. Italy was at the seaside or high on a mountain. It was backgrounds of cicadas interrupted by late traffic, bar staff pulling down their blinds, and in Parma, August empty, left to the extracomunitari, such as we'd soon be, Africa was on the pavement, shouldering her baby, with a bright print swatch of cloth, Africa and Asia too, queuing for nationality. Someone messaged from back home, asking, how was Italy? Bill, that's when I thought of you, for Italy was at the seaside or high on a mountain. True, Italy was something else, and something else again. Third one is very, very short. My Parma comes up for me a lot because my wife is from Parma, and we obviously in the days when one could, we used to visit there very regularly. And my mother-in-law lives just across a park in one of the suburbs of the town. So obviously the quick way to get from our flat to my mother-in-law's is to walk across the park, but we don't do that at night. And this is a little poem about why, but also touching again on the question of migration into Italy and the kinds of things that the poor migrants sometimes get caught up in. It's called Black Economy. No, we don't cross the park at night. The darker figures on street corners are dealers with their bikes, their phones. Arrived here from the far migrations, they haunt arcades of a penny market. But who buys, I ask you? Who supplies? And finally, a little poem which generalizes a little bit more about this great problem facing the world at the moment of migrating across borders, and how for everyone it can prove very complicated. This is called Importing Love. Tomato plants, melons, the courgette flowers in rows are bordered by a file of trees. Their knotted trunks and coppery leaves make screens for flatlock speculations, but neither of us have been saying a word about arrivals, departures, or how hard importing love can prove to be. What with never-ending customs checks, the language frontiers struggle to cross, and how much it costs to get over a border, hard or soft, though we each tried harder than anyone ever expected and found, surviving, how a sound grounding in pain might prove the only way to love again. But in that apartment block's lengthened shade, you relive how the promise of love deceives, and nobody's fault will abruptly fade, then patiently attending on an August's heat. I couldn't miss how, wide planted apart, how two of the neighboring trees had reached their wind-blown tops together and interwoven their red leaves. Thank you very, very much for letting me read those, and also thank you for inviting me to take part in the judging of this competition, which has been an absolute delight. It's been wonderful to collaborate with the other judges, and thank you very much to all the organizers for making this wonderful thing happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And I think we're all very grateful for each other. Everybody has played a unique part in bringing this all together. As I say, you know, without the entrants, without the judges, without, you know, everybody has had a part to play. So I think that's a really good thing. It's how teams work, and everybody's been kind, respectful, and pulled their weight. Okay, we're now handing over to, I'm going to introduce a lady who's a member of the Reading Amnesty International group. Her name is Durga Dachau, and she's a member of the Reading group, as I say. She's originally from Nepal, and has been involved in helping people in the community in Reading. And she's got a very strong interest in women's rights and women's empowerment, both in Nepal and in the UK. And Durga has some poems, or a poem that she would like to read to us. So Durga, if you want to unmute yourself. Her poem's called, well, she may want to introduce her poem. So Durga, it's...
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Thank you very much. I would like to say thank you to Reading Amnesty International for giving me an opportunity to read this poem. I have written this poem giving a title of Woman's Pain. But it represents not only one woman's pain, it's actually many women's pain in Nepal, including other countries in South Asia. What is written in poem exactly same situation exists or can be found in different places in Nepal. I myself have seen this kind of scenario and inspired to write this poem, which is not only imagination, which is not only in my imagination, but it's a real story of many women in Nepal. Now I'm going to read my poem. My poem title is A Woman's Pain. A woman is raped, beaten, and abused as though she is only for personal use. A woman is raped, beaten, and abused as though she is only for personal use. She is bound to household chore. She has no freedom anymore. Her one duty is childbirth. Her one duty is childbirth. Her children are given her husband's name. Neither children nor wealth in her possession. Neither children nor wealth in her possession. This repeats again and again, and other girls are queue in this rotation. This repeats again and again, and other girls queue in this rotation. Neither father, brother, or husband. Neither father, brother, or husband, nor the society and the government. Neither father, brother, or husband, nor the society and the government acknowledge her significant role. They only keep her under their control. No law or order is strong. No law or order is strong. They all try to prove her wrong. Her voice is never heard. She cannot step forward alone. Days, months, and years are spent. Days, months, and years are spent. A woman is always dependent. Society pushes her to the back, labeling her biological weak. She always makes her a sacrifice. She always makes a sacrifice. She has no life and no price. She is bound all day and night. She spends her life having to fight, bearing all kind of sadness and sorrows. Bearing all kind of sadness and sorrows. There is no certainty for tomorrow. Her beautiful life is passing in vain. A woman is surviving in deep pain. A woman is surviving in a deep pain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Durga. And I think that is very moving and very, it resonates with me as a woman, I guess. So I imagine it resonates with a lot of other people on the call. So thank you very much.
Thank you
for sharing that with us. And this is the point where we've got, yes, I've got a poem to read, and some other people from the team will be reading their poem. So mine is a poem that is written by Ahmed Mansour, who I mentioned was in, there we go, I'm just pulling the poem up, in Our Prisoner of Conscience, and one of the sort of rationales for putting the event together. And yeah, right, okay, I'll do it with me. Here we go. So Ahmed Mansour is called Final Choice. I have no other means now but a tight-lipped silence in the square and through corridors, since I have tried everything, screams, chants, signboards, obstructing roads and lying on the ground in front of queues, cutting through the procession with eggs, tomatoes and blazing tyres, hurling burning bottles and stones, stripped naked in front of the public, carving statements in flesh, walking masked in front of cameras, dressed in shackles, tied and chained to garden fences, swallowing rusty razor blades and splintered glass, hacking off fingers with a machete, and hanging myself from lampposts, dousing the body with kerosene and setting it aflame. I have tried all this, but you did not even turn to look. This time, I swear, I won't utter a word or move. I will stay the way I am until you turn to look, or until I am petrified.
So, hello everyone. I'm the Cuba country coordinator for Amnesty UK, and I'd like to read a poem by Pablo Pacheco Avila, who is a Cuban journalist who was imprisoned in 2003 in a severe crackdown on the dissident movement in Cuba. He was an Amnesty prisoner of conscience, and he served 7 years of a 20-year sentence. He was exiled to Spain with his wife and young son, and he now lives in America. He visited the UK in 2011, staying at my house, and was able to meet and thank many Amnesty members who had worked for his freedom, including the Reading Group. Pablo says he's not a poet, but he did write poems in prison, like this one that I'm going to read for you. And I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to read it in Spanish first because it sounds so much better than my translation. So you just have to bear with me. I don't know if anybody understands Spanish, but anyway. Thank you. So in Spanish first then. Las estrellas me ayudan. Las estrellas son mi extraña compañía en estos días de cautiverio. No me rindo, no cedo, y mis verdugos se asustan. Hoy tengo una carta tuya y la leo con esmero. También ellas son fiel ayuda en cada noche de silencio. Los marineros se ubican por las estrellas y las adoro porque cuando lo deseo están de mi lado. Ahora veo tu imagen en la brisa del invierno. Me río esta noche y aunque me rinda el sueño, tengo las estrellas. Now in English. The stars help me. The stars are my strange companions in these days of captivity. I do not surrender, I do not yield, and my jailers are fearful. Today I have a letter from you, and I read it so carefully. Your letters too are my steadfast help in each night of silence. Sailors find their way by the stars, which I adore. For whenever I wish, they are by my side. Now I see your face in winter's breeze. I laugh to myself, it's night time. And though sleep overcomes me, I have the stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Apologies, I didn't have your poem up ready. There we go, but it's very moving, and I guess it demonstrates that people in times of stress maybe take to expressing themselves through poetry.
Could I just add that when Pablo came to the UK, he said over and over and over again how grateful he was to Amnesty and to people who wrote letters and supported him, and that he felt that Amnesty had saved his life, and he couldn't tell us enough how important the letters were, how it made people, you know, prisoners feel as though they weren't alone. It gave them hope, and yeah, it was an extremely moving experience meeting him. It's fantastic. Thank you.
I think now it's Amanda. Are you reading a poem?
Yes, I am. Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda, and I do South Asia actions and volunteering with Amnesty International Reading. And fittingly, I have chosen the poet Rabindranath Tagore, who is a poet from Calcutta, India. He became the first non-European to win the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature for a series of poems that was published in his book. And from time to time, he participated in the Indian nationalist movement, and apparently Gandhi was one of his devoted friends. So the poem is called Freedom, and it represents his view of gaining freedom and independence from colonialism, obviously especially English control over India. And it's about freedom from fear and oppression, and he wishes the country to be free of burden of the years it has been oppressed for. So here's the poem. Freedom from fear is the freedom I claim for you, my motherland. Freedom from the burden of the ages, bending your head, breaking your back, blinding your eyes to the beckoning call of the future. Freedom from the shackles of slumber wherewith you fasten yourself in night stillness, mistrusting the star that speaks of truth's adventurous paths. Freedom from the anarchy of destiny, whose sails are weakly yielded to the blind uncertain winds, and the helm to a hand over rigid and cold as death. Freedom from the insult of dwelling in a puppet's world, where movements are started through brainless wires, repeated through mindless habits, where figures wait with patience and obedience for the master of show to be stirred into a mimicry of life. Yeah, I think hopefully that should be good.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you for, I don't think you actually said that you were part of the organising group for the whole event. So thank you, and yeah, we won't make it a how great we are. Vin, did
I'm
you?
here.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
Yeah.
here and I've got poems.
Excellent, and you've got the hat on.
I've got the hat on. I've got the hat. Yes. First of all, I just want to say thank you, to everyone who's participated, and especially to you, Ruth, as well, for spending 2 hours of your evening emceeing for us tonight and putting this all together. It's been fantastic. And one thing I will say to the wider audience is that, I joined the group about, 5 months ago, perhaps, and I wasn't expecting, I thought like-minded individuals, yes, but I wasn't expecting to speak to a good group of friends more or less every day. We chat and we just have each other's backs, and we're very, there's the camaraderie there, and it's just fantastic. And I would really advocate, if you're not a member of your local Amnesty group, join it. And if you can have as great friendships as I've made, then that would be, wonderful. So I'd really advocate that, as much as the human rights, of course. I've got 2 poems here. The first one is actually called I Dream a World, and it's by Langston Hughes. So Hughes describes an ideal world where men don't harm others, irrespective of race and colour, and there's equal opportunity for all. Langston was an American novelist, playwright, and poet. I dream a world where man, sorry, let me start again, sorry. I dream a world where man, no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free, where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy, like a pearl, attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream my world. I just found that really powerful. And I learned a new word, which is avarice, which is extreme greed for wealth or material gain. And then the final poem is a quick one by Nikita Gill from her book called While Embers, which is poems of reflection, fire, and beauty. It's a collection of poetry about feminism, trauma, survival, and empowerment. So this is called Fire by Nikita Gill. Remember what you must do when they undervalue you, when they think your softness is your weakness, when they treat your kindness like it is their advantage. You awaken every dragon, every wolf, every monster that sleeps inside you, and you remind them what hell looks like when it wears the skin of a gentle human. I just, again, found that really powerful. So that's my two. Thank you.
Thank you, Vin. I'm learning so much about poetry because this has been an adventure for me, because I'm probably on the numbers spectrum rather than the word spectrum. So this is a learning experience for me. So at this point, I'll be handing over to Ian Mackenzie, who has been a member of Amnesty International for 4 years, it says here. He's been an English teacher for a very long time. I won't give away how long. He might want to do that himself. But he's performed at various poetry events and open mics. And I believe he's got some poems to read to us before he then takes over announcing the adult poem winners. Ian, over to you.
Yes, I just remembered I had to unmute myself there. So hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. This time has just gone by so quickly. So I think that's kind of testament to how intriguing and moving and absorbing it's been listening to all the previous poets. I'm going to start off with reading two poems, and then I'm going to say a few words about the judging the adults section, and then introduce you to the three finalists, the three winners. So this first poem, it's about the plight of migrants who are fleeing, and in their desperation, they're taken into leaky boats and wondering what kind of welcome they'll receive, or even if they'll arrive. It's called Incomers. Crossing a thin fiery line, they come, issuing from the burnt ashes of the sinking sun, doused by a watery horizon. Mute promises of relief on the soft breath of cloud-rimmed lips, wine-darkened and seductive, whispering gentle longings to parched bones scorched by desert winds. Ready to put all on the throw of a loaded dice, not heroes in 1,000 sleek long ships, but cramped in dilapidated hulks, migrating death traps. A surge of fleeing human misery, they wade or stagger through welcoming surf, not for plunder, not for retribution nor conquest. They wield no shining bronze accoutrements or weapons, no invading warriors, only the ragged remnants of dazed survivors. Their hopes more tenuous than the taut wedge between sea and sky. So there they lie in supplication, seeking no hostages, no spoils of war to carry home victorious, only a beseeching hand held out in hopes of a courteous welcome. So thank you. And the second poem is one that I wrote last year. I was thinking about all the sort of like comments and things about cancel culture and what exactly it meant. And I thought, well, there are some there who's with their comments on wokeness would have you believe that being awake is a bad thing, that they're somehow being cancelled as they simultaneously broadcast from the pulpit of Fox News or some other privileged platform. And I wrote this poem not long after the killing of George Floyd, who I remember somebody mentioned that it's the anniversary. if one can use that term in such a circumstance. And I try to give a more honest perspective on what being cancelled really means. And I hope you forgive me. I couldn't do this without stepping outside of myself and adopting another viewpoint, as if, if I was either George Floyd or somebody who had suffered the same kind of fate. So it's cancel culture. Further reflections. Please, I can't breathe. Can you kindly take your knee, take it from off my neck? What right do you think you have to choke the life out of me? Please, I can't breathe. How many times do I have to say it? You are hurting me. It seems many lifetimes ago, way back in the blank pages of history, the pages they did not want you to see. They covered it up, swept it under the rug, buried beneath the dust of their distorted mythologies. People like me were not meant to be seen, not seen as human beings with the same equal human rights, to be treated with respect, just plain and simple common decency. So I ask you, please, I can't breathe. You have stolen my dignity and thrown it to the dogs to chew over and spit it out again. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It seems like a lifetime ago now. Watch the video. You will clearly see as the seconds turn into minutes, into years, into decades. See my life flash before your eyes, all down the centuries as you kept your knee on my neck, draining the life from me. And one more time, I beg you, please, I can't breathe. Please, don't cancel me. Thank you. So, sorry, I was getting a bit emotional towards the end there. Yeah, it was one of those events and one of those situations that I think, I don't know how you express your anger and how to imagine being somebody in that situation on the other side of the line there. So anyway, I'll just get my composure back, and I'd just like to say a few comments about the judging. And yes, as every one of my fellow judges have said, it was an honour and been a privilege to work with them, but also to have the access to read all of these poems that were people sent in. Such a positive and enlightening response there. I'd like to thank Hilary and team, Ruth, Finn, and Amanda, who just found out was on the team. I think without them, we wouldn't be doing this. And also, I'd just like to say this might be hopefully the inaugural Reading Amnesty Poetry Competition on social justice, and that would be really lovely to see you all again here next year. The task of the judging panel was not made easier by the fact that the poems we encountered displayed such a consistently high quality, both in the ideas that they developed and the language and techniques that was used to present them. They covered a wide range of subjects, of all sorts of issues concerning social justice, from women's rights, Black Lives Matter, the plight of orphans, imprisonment without trial, and right across the whole gamut of human rights abuses. And just a few examples of some of the topics. Excuse me, I'm drying up. So we had an acrobat in Palestine arrested and imprisoned on his way to teach young children how to juggle and unicycle. As he measures his sail in his hands, we're left to wonder at the mental acrobatics of those who put him in there. Then we have the day's survivors in a vicious civil war the morning after a nighttime bombardment. Then there's one with young children being dressed in their Sunday best to go off to join the other displaced refugees fleeing from conflict, their well-shined shoes soon covered in the dust of the road. And then a young girl muses about growing into womanhood amid the arid tented city of a hostile, lawless refugee camp, and sings songs from home to comfort a younger sister. Or simply we're shown 3 rose stems being washed up on a foreign shore by the tide. A simple image, but such a powerful impact. And that was just a handful of the range of subjects that we read. And for the judges, I think I can say we felt that when considering our choices that these poems spoke with eloquence, with great empathy, and above all a fearlessness, confronting their subjects with their truth. And hopefully they offer a voice for those who are unable to speak for themselves, political prisoners, asylum seekers, displaced refugees, the homeless, or the victims of discrimination, simply for being different, different colour of skin, different religion, different gender, or different sexual orientation, or just for thinking different thoughts. Before I introduce the 3 final poets, I just kind of mentioned a roll of honour for the highly commended in alphabetical order. So we had Barrel Bomb by Sue Johns. So I saw Sue earlier. Well done. Thank you very much for that. Displacement by Virginia Grimm. Then Genesis, a poem by Sarah Key. And Mohammed Faisal Abu Saka by Emmeline O'Dowd. Small Change by Anne Casey, I believe is from Sydney, Australia. So we have a truly international flavour for this first Amnesty Poetry Competition. And then finally, 3 Roses Lie Stranded by Jane Olive. Again, that is one that touched all of us very much when we were reading these poems. Anyway, so I'll introduce you to the 3 winning poets if they're ready to unmute after I've just given a brief introduction. So finally, in 3rd place, if we can really talk about 3rd, 2nd or 1st place, Oh Bethlehem by Wendy Jane Walton. So her poem takes us from biblical times right up to the present. The balletic volta leading to its paradoxical conclusion is carried off with great skill and some ironic humour. At the same time, it confirms some aspects of life, like the inherent risks of childbirth, have not really changed that much in the interim for some who are still looking for a room at the inn. So if Wendy Jane, if you're ready to unmute, I'd love to hear from you.
I am. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
We certainly can.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody at Reading Amnesty International for hosting this competition. I'll describe to you how I came to write this poem. In late 2019, 2 friends of mine, a couple of doctors, both GPs, went to Palestine on a cycle tour, which was organised by an organisation called Medical Aid to Palestine, specifically to look at the difficulties that the Palestinians have in accessing medical care, but the plight in general. And when they came back, they gave a talk, an illustrated talk, describing the difficulties that they'd encountered and how dreadful the situation was for women there. It was near Christmas 2019, and I was just very conscious when they were talking about the settlements near Bethlehem and how if a woman's caught on the wrong side of the wall, she can really end up in a very difficult situation. And it generated this poem. And I shared it with the friends who had inspired it. And then sometime early this year, Quentin sent me a link saying, why don't you send your Bethlehem poem into this competition? I wouldn't have known about it. So I owe it entirely to somebody else. So Quentin and Kath Shaw, this is to thank them. O Bethlehem. Near Bethlehem, a woman's time has come. The pains of labour, wave on rolling wave, an urgency that brooks no sympathy from checkpoint guards. 2 hours or more to wait, the brute humiliation and the search, and not to count when all the counting's done. Deprived, despised, denied her right to birth in cleanliness and calm, held captive there by Israel's concrete wall, permitting her no dignity at all in which to bear her son, no midwife's care, no room at the inn. Today, to stay in Bethlehem, a guest can book a room that proudly boasts the worst view in the world, a slice of hell, brainchild of Banksy, the walled-off hotel. A commentary in situ lends a hand. If you're not completely baffled, you don't understand. Thank you.
And thank you, Wendy. That's a beautiful poem there. And I really loved the quite sort of contradictory sort of conclusion. It made you really think there. So our second place poem was Beachcombing by Lizzie Lister. And this poem deals with the pervasive topic of migration and the displacement of people escaping wars and social injustice. It powerfully evokes a sense of loss and pathos. It uses mundane, everyday objects to highlight excuse me, what is actually missing, and begs the question, where are the bodies? So, Lizzie, if you please step up.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the organisers of this poetry competition. It's been actually great to have a place to send this poem. This poem is actually a small excerpt from a much longer poetry sequence on migration. It came about from helping at a local refugee aid charity called Open Hearts, Open Borders, for which I volunteer at on a very casual basis. The charity leaders, Faraday Fanside and Hannah Dunn, are amazing women, and they set up the charity to send aid where it was needed and also help with repatriation. And we were filling lorries with food and clothes and sending them to Syria, Calais and Greece, yet it seemed to me that the actual numbers of repatriated immigrants was only a trickle. I was also growing increasingly horrified by tales of the treatment of people seeking asylum in the UK and the increase in open racism generally. When we've travelled by train from Cornwall to countries like Turkey and Morocco, we've been treated with such generosity by people who have very little. It struck me that we in the UK are enormously privileged, and privilege often seems to erode humanity and build barriers to compassion. So I hope that by writing a poetry sequence, I'd have a means of communicating this concern to a wider audience and inspire compassion in those who'd lost sight of the bigger picture. I also wanted to make sure anything I wrote was in some way rooted in my own experiences as a privileged outsider. So this poem, Beachcombing, is in 2 parts with a coda and came about in 2 ways. The central section was inspired by regular sea swimming. And as a sea swimmer, you're very aware of the power of the sea, how quickly its moods can change, how as you get further from shore, the water gets darker and more menacing, and how the creatures are larger, and how quickly the weather on any day can change from calm to turbulent, and what it must be like on a boat trying to cross the channel. The outer segments are inspired by a regular habit of beachcombing, and for years I've picked litter off the beach, and often there's an enigma in the things you find. scraps of clothing, shoes, toothbrushes, and unidentifiable bits of plastic and rubber. And last spring, my family and I had gone for a low tide scramble over rocks to an inaccessible cove, which was strewn with bright orange and blue debris, which we concluded was probably the remnants of a dinghy. And so it struck me that that was our connection between those persecuted, brave people who make that terrifying journey across the Channel to a completely uncertain future, and our own privileged Cornish lives. So this is my poem. Beachcombing. Sometimes the shipwrecks bring bounty. We head down to the shore, gather pine boards from the Kadima to build our sheds. Lego, pink bleach bottles, toothbrushes, Zippo lighters, we collect them all. Sometimes among the stinking soup of bladderwrack is a scrap store flotilla, fluorescent jigsaws of torn orange jackets, black nylon straps, buckles, plastic whistles, ragged strips of rubber like peeled blue skin. 2. The sea is calm. In the open expanse above us, COVID has unpicked vapour trail threads, leaving only a single Caesar scar across the clean blue belly of sky. To the east, moth holes in grey cashmere clouds reveal altocumulus stretch marks on watery cobalt. Time paddles slowly. Storms come unannounced as advancing embrace of damson bruises the sky. Chrome beams from velvet shadows floodlight our craft. As cumulonimbus spill their load, a sabre of metal light strikes raindrops with prisms, sourly sweet against a growling discontent of swelling water. 3. When you know the tides, you know where the bodies will come. Occasionally their shoes come first, white trainers bobbing on surf like baby gulls, laces tangled, tongues hanging out, gritty with sand. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lizzie. That I think we were all very touched and moved there when we were reading these and judging. So finally, we come to the winner, and it's 6 Ways to Evade Censorship by David Hale. And obviously, freedom of speech, censorship, being silenced is one of the main issues I think that Amnesty is concerned with, and giving a voice to those prisoners of conscience and political prisoners. But as the judging panel, I think, commented, this poem shows a well-crafted control and poignantly captures what is succinctly referred to as the treason of speech. It seems, I think, that wherever human rights are abused, the shadow of censorship will be there in the vanguard, or following closely on its heels, if not sooner. So, David, we'd love to hear you read your poem there. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much to the, can you hear me? Yeah, yes, okay. Thanks to the judges, and thanks to the competition. It was fantastic, actually. I wrote this poem about 2 months ago. It was what you'd call a gift as a poet, I suppose. It just came. But when I was thinking about it, underneath it, there's so much other stuff. I mean, I've written a lot about dissidents and outsiders in our society and abroad, a lot about Soviet dissidents as well, particularly poets and writers. So there was that behind it. And I've also worked with people on the edge of society for most of my life, and I've been teaching Syrian and Afghans and lots of different Kurds and all sorts of people over the last 4 or 5 years as well. So that's underneath it as well. But I suppose I had been reading, just before I wrote this poem, I'd been reading articles about Nadezhda Mandelstam, who was Osip Mandelstam's wife, and Osip Mandelstam, the famous Soviet poet who died on his way to a labor camp in 1938. And also about the Iranian poet Simim Behar, I've got to get her name right, Simim Behar Bahani, I hope I've said it right, who was an amazing poet activist in Iran. She died not that long ago. She was called the Lioness of Iran, and was troubled a lot by the secret police and the authorities. And I started reading other articles about a lot of, well, Iraqi poets who had been disappeared. So I ended up writing this, and this poem in my head was set actually in Tehran, but I decided not to specify, because this poem could be about someone in Saudi, it could be some, Palestine, it could be in Syria, it could be in so many different places. The last thing that came, I'd just like to say, the last thing that came was actually the title. I couldn't think of a title for this wretched poem, and then that title sort of pulled it all together. So I'll just read it then. Six ways to evade censorship. Knowing her words are deemed treasonous, she writes poems on scraps of paper, sews them into mattresses and cushion covers, inscribes them on the memories of of devoted followers and friends. Fearing phone taps, black cars outside her apartment, that the next imprisonment might be her last, she takes to writing on the face of the breeze, on the surface of the water, onto slips of paper which she wraps around the legs of doves and casts them up into the hot night sky.
That's it. Thank you, David. That's a tremendous poem. I think it's basically, I'll just end by giving congratulations to all the poets, particularly the three that we've just heard there, but also the highly commended, and all the other ones that we read, which I felt a sort of sense of privilege there, being able to read through all of those before anybody else. I just think it only leaves me to hand back over to Ruth.
Yeah,
to take over.
Yes, thank you for your input. I'm always impressed at how people can express the understanding and the background to the poem. So that's very useful from yourself and from all of the poets. I think we have some time now. I know there's a couple of the poets who were in the highly commended category. No, it's not a category, but you know what I mean, who were highly commended. Their poems were highly commended by the judges, and I think we've got time to go through some of those. So I think, is Sarah Key available and happy to read her poem?
Yes, I am. Just close the door 1 sec. Thank you, and thank you so much for this program. I'm really moved by all the poems today. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. So away you go, so you can give a bit of background and then read your poem. That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. So this poem, Genesis, was inspired after I watched the George Floyd video. My boyfriend had watched it a couple months before and had cried, and I I couldn't bring myself to watch it for the longest time. And then I read an article in the New Yorker written by Elizabeth Alexander, a poet, and that inspired me to get myself to watch the video, and it was just so disturbing. So this is the poem that came from that. Genesis. Let there be woman. God saw her gaze was good, unflinching. Let her pluck her iPhone from the tree of knowledge. Let her 17 years span generations of Minneapolis police bruising her people. Let her hands be firm in the firmament. When she presses record, let her backbone be strong for 8 minutes and 46 seconds in the presence of 4 armed men. Let her bless the man being ground into dust with the breath of witness. Let her courage spread like a pandemic, her vision pull down monuments of hate, drive the rebel flag to hell, unbind cords of rope by the light of our guilt. Let her press on hope, open every throat. Let her name be Darnella Frazier.
Thank you very much. It's very moving. I'm glad we got to hear it and everybody else got to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I think is Sue Johns. You may not want to read your poem, Sue, if you're.
No, I don't mind if you're not all poemed out.
Well, I think there were so many good. I mean, it was such a challenge. So I think we've got a bit of time. So I think it's nice to let people speak.
Thank you. Yeah, well, with a title like Barrel Bomb, I don't know how much explanation I need to give for the poem, really. I do know that prior to writing it, I'd read a very detailed article. It could well have been an Amnesty article. I'm a member, and so it could well have been an Amnesty article about what goes into a barrel bomb, how they're constructed, and then likewise the sort of damage that it will wreak on whoever's on the other side of it when it goes off. Barrel bomb. In a city where sirens hush the night creatures, every morning is eaten off a knife. A widow comes to breakfast on blood and masonry, plucking my debris from the earth. The furrows of her palms are ignorant of their cargo, as are the soles of her feet. I am the penitent beggar at the heel of her broken shoe. Sister, I cry, cast me skyward, stop this mortiferous rain. Reverse my unguided fall, refill me with oil. Remove my bearings from the shredded limbs, return them to industry. Take me back to scrap and pig iron. Have the furnace recast me as a bedpan or scalpel. Bring the nails from the hospital, the ones that took the eye, the nose, the tongue. Reinvent them as a trundle cot or crutches. Thank you very much.
Very graphic in ways. I think we also have Emmeline O'Dowd. I don't know whether you're on the line and whether you'd like to read your poem.
Yes, I'm here.
Would you like to read your poem?
I can do, yes, thank you.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's all right. I read about this case in the Amnesty magazine, I think. It's called Mohammed Faisal Abu Sakar. Now he is a Palestinian circus performer and a teacher of circus skills to children with learning difficulties. And he was imprisoned for 2 years without charge or trial by the Israeli military, as he was considered a danger to the security of the area. Mohammed Faisal Abu Sakar has nothing else to juggle, so keeps in practice with rolled up socks, paces out his cell on his hands, thinks of his parents whose house he left at the usual time, of his class of special children and how they'd have enjoyed the unicycle. He's good at Diabolo and roller bowler, can keep 5 plates at a time spinning on sticks. But that's no match for the mental acrobatics that hold him here. Do they think the stilt men will come striding over the razor wire to open the gates for the ruthless red noses? He walks each day's tightrope, hoping there will be no animal acts. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we're sort of at the end of the evening, more or less. There's one more thank you that I've got to say, and I need to do this because the Reading Refugee Support Group, we're going to have an event this evening, and they kindly moved it, as you will see, to Thursday the 3rd of June, so do take a look at that. It's Fragments, an evening of theatre film in celebration of Sanctuary. So we're very grateful that they shifted the event, and I would definitely encourage you to support that. And then I think the next thing, we've all been on mute and we've all been very good. So I think if people want to take themselves off mute and actually make some loud clapping noises for everybody who's taken part, and I think it would be great. And I think going back to the start and some of the themes running through the poems that we've heard this evening are: don't stand by and watch, just say something, even if it is to write a poem and to educate people, or to send, as Sue was saying, the letters of support to prisoners and so on and so forth. Everything that you do that is built with kindness and justice is something good to do for the world. I don't know what else to say. I don't know whether any of the other people from Reading Amnesty would like to say anything.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who participated in the poetry competition, who wrote in their entries, and everyone who joined today. It has been honestly such an event to organise, and very kindly Ruth, Vin and Hilary have done an incredible job. I have been busy the past 4 weeks, but they have done an incredible job. And yeah, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful to grow in our friendship, and also to raise awareness of social justice as a kind of collaborative team. And the poems have been really inspiring. Everyone's been really engaged and polite. So I think it's went really well. So thank you everyone for your input and your time, as always, very much appreciated.
Okay, right. Well, I hate saying goodbye, and it's even worse when you have to say goodbye on Zoom. So I think we can just say good night, have a lovely rest of evening. Think about your actions going forward if you can make any, and until next year, I guess, as Ian was saying, maybe this was the first of many to come. So thank you again. Thank you for the entries. Thank you for being here. and let's make the world a better place in tiny steps as best as we can. And hopefully, I don't know whether Desra is still here, but hopefully she will get to the space, or the world will get to the place where we don't need to keep fighting. And, you know, that would be a great thing. Thank you. And I'm going to turn my camera